Thank you for being with us today for On the Road and On the Air with Capital City Connection and Troy Public Radio's Community Focus. We are thrilled to be visiting with the City of Montgomery Zoo, Jennifer Hutchison, Curator of Education, and Ken Knorr, Manager of Conservation and Enrichment, and my good friend Glenda McNair, local birder and member of several birding expeditions to Central and South America. Today we're in bear country, folks. Where are we?
We're inside our Mann Museum, which is attached to the City of Montgomery Zoo, and we are surrounded by some very beautiful bears.
So we're in bear country at the City of Montgomery Zoo in the Mann Wildlife Learning Museum. Ken, what's it all about?
Well, this is an opportunity for visitors to understand just how large and massive some of these animals are. In the zoo, they can't get close enough to appreciate the size, but here they can be right next to that animal and really appreciate how massive they are.
Glenda, you're headed out west for a birding expedition, and we saw a southwest part of this Mann Wildlife Learning Museum. What did you think?
Well, I loved it. I was a little bit alarmed at the poisonous snakes and the poisonous iguana there, but at the quail, if I can just see those quail out in the west, I would love to see that.
So really what the Mann Wildlife Learning Museum is brings all of North America here. That's its mission, correct? That's right. And it's huge.
It is. People don't realize, I mean, you come around a corner and then you go around the next corner and around the next corner, and yeah, it's a very large museum. It can take a good hour to walk through here and look at every exhibit.
We saw the polar bear just around the corner from here. Ken, I didn't realize how huge polar bears are.
Oh, they are. They're massive. They're actually the largest species of bear, and they just make us look small. Mm-hmm.
Jennifer, tell us more about George Mann. Who was he? Who is he?
Well, George Mann, he was a hunter that he wanted to start a museum to educate people about what kind of wildlife you do find in North America. He started this museum actually in Opelika. It was there for many, many years. And when he was ready to let go of it, he actually sold it to the Montgomery Zoo so that it could stay in Alabama and be a part of, our Alabama wildlife and our wonderful zoo right here.
Ken, I noticed a message as Glenda and I were walking in, and it said, hunters and anglers contribute to conservation. How do they do that?
Well, they manage the population in a biological way. The hunters will take out select individuals. The animals that allow themselves to be separated and captured are usually the weakest in a herd, or you can actually thin out a dominant member of the herd and allow the younger members to move on up. So it's kind of a natural selection purpose. That's what the hunter serves.
As a conservation manager, you're concerned about people losing touch with the outdoors.
That's right.
How did that concern come about?
Well, in just the way we live now as opposed to 30 years ago, there were more wild spaces than there are now. And it seems like everyone is being kind of set into a subdivision. Everywhere you go now, they're just nobody's living on farms so much anymore, and we all just have a similar lifestyle away from wildlife. And a lot of the subdivisions that we live in are kind of monolithic habitats where you might find one or two species and that's it. And most of the natural numbers are gone.
One of the great things about the Mann Wildlife Museum and the City of Montgomery Zoo is whether the animals are threatened or endangered or plentiful, you have those animals here, whether it's in the museum where you can touch the fur in the exhibits or see them in a habitat that simulates their natural environment.
That's right. It's really important, I think, for people to not only educate themselves or have the opportunity to be educated, but also a hands-on kind of learning process. That really goes a long way to help people appreciate nature, and that's what conservation is about. You can't really conserve anything if you don't know anything about it.
And Jennifer, that's a big part of your job as the education curator. You're always going to schools and groups and bringing animals. How does that work?
Actually, they'll contact us when they want us to bring out a program, and we have about 40 animals in our education department to choose from. So we'll put together a program for them depending on what the schools are studying, take the animals out there, and it's a wonderful chance for these kids to not only learn about these animals, but they get to see them up close. I have volunteers that work with me that take the animals out around through the crowd, and most people that you've ever talked to have never seen a barred owl out in the wild, much less, right here in front of you. So it's amazing to see these kids' reactions to being close to animals that they didn't even know were even out there in Alabama. It's a wonderful opportunity.
And a great thing about the Mann Wildlife Museum is that you have educational exhibits along with the animals.
We do. We have little touch tables that they can go through. They can feel what the furs feel like of different bears and different deer. And that's stuff that they wouldn't get to experience otherwise.
Glenda, your big area of interest is birds.
Yes.
Tell me more about your interest and how that fits in with what the museum is doing or what the zoo is doing.
Well, first of all, I'm seeing more interest in the backyard gardener because I see more people who are planting seed and growing food for birds, migration birds and birds that are in their backyards. I have been very fortunate that I am in a neighborhood that has good migration. So this year was not the very best because of the 3-day storm that we had here. But I certainly look forward to the orioles and the vireos and just some of my favorite birds. They really are a thrill in the month of April. And that's about it.
Some of your expeditions with the Audubon Society and Cornell University, you've been able to see exotic species that are here.
Yes.
What are some of your favorites?
Well, the resplendent quetzal, but I don't think it's here. But there is a chance that I could see this in southwest Arizona if that bird has come up from Mexico on its migration, and that would be wonderful. It would be an eared quetzal. That would be really something. But of course I am interested in the new parakeet enclosure because I have seen parakeets that were as large as 7, 8, 9 inches long. It's pretty large. Some of them as large as a regular parrot. So, and that was mostly in Costa Rica. So it was tremendous to see the interest here, even in the smaller level.
So you've been in the rainforest, you've been in the jungle, seeing these birds up close. And Ken here, as a conservation manager, is responsible for perhaps bringing some of these birds here. How do you do that? How do you bring species here when there's so much competition?
Well, first of all, we design a collection plan. All of our managers here, we get together and we decide on what would bring the most educational value, how to most efficiently use our space for animals that are the most endangered. And we have to follow a plan called an SSP plan that our accreditation committee, the American Zoo and Aquarium Association, puts forth for us. An SSP is a managed group of endangered animals called the Species Survival Plan. And each one of those has an elected committee that decides how many spaces are going to be available for that year, how many animals will be transferred, and how many animals will be potentially reproduced. So we follow that management guidelines to use our space.
So how do you compete with the large zoos for these animals?
It is tough sometimes. We just kind of have to get our wants and needs out there, make them known, and it's more of a negotiation process.
And thanks to the City of Montgomery Zoo and the curator of education here who can bring some of these endangered and threatened species to the school children, to groups, they're able, like Glenda, to see these birds up close and personal.
Yeah, Ken and I sit down a lot, to discuss what types of animals we think would be a good fit in education, and sometimes it's, not possible due to housing requirements, or maybe something might be a little bit too aggressive, but we sit down, we discuss it. We got to talk about, what kind of care it requires and caging and space, but yeah, it's definitely a challenge to get in what we feel would be the best animals to take out to the schools, but, we do a good job, I think.
What's so interesting about your work is that it's global. globally are concerned about preservation of species. How are we standing with that?
Well, unfortunately, it's still a fairly bleak picture. We need more people to be involved, more resources, but we're doing what we can with what we have.
Ken, we were talking about exotics. How do you and Jennifer feel about owning some of the exotic animals that, say, Glenda has seen in the rainforest and in the jungles? Is it a good idea or not to have an exotic for a pet?
Well, I happen to think that the average citizen could actually make a contribution to conservation if they educate themselves about exotic animals, which animals would make the best pets, and they need to keep up with bloodlines and be conscious of where they get these animals from. They wouldn't want to buy them from a dealer who, say, captures these animals from the wild. They would want to buy them from reputable private breeders, and then share their knowledge, and also perhaps breed them even in captivity and send those potential offspring out to other private keepers.
This almost sounds scientific.
It does, and it can be. I think that's what our goal is.
But I think the problem that we run into is that people don't do that kind of research. And I know I get a lot of calls every day that people want to donate animals to the zoo that they have gotten as a pet and they're not able to care for. So we do have certain recommendations, but I know I'll go into the schools. We actually do a wild animal as pets program, especially for little kids, to try to educate them on, what pets or wild animals would make good pets, but which ones really wouldn't.
Give us an idea about those two.
Because a lot of people, when you go into a pet store and you see an iguana's like this big. Adorable. I mean, I'll tell you, they're really, really cute. You get a little 10-gallon aquarium and you think you're good to go, but people don't realize those animals can grow to be 6 feet long. And they can be very, very aggressive. And once they get to be so large, I even tell little kids, I'm like, if you want an iguana for a pet, you're going to need to have a cage the size of your bedroom. And most kids will agree they don't want to give up their bedroom for an iguana. So, and that's one of the calls that I'll get. Well, we've got this big, 5-foot iguana that we can't care for anymore. Well, we can't take it in either. We don't have the resources to care for all these pets that people aren't able to care for. And a lot of times they end up just letting them go, which can hurt, the environment where they're living. I know you probably heard a couple winters ago about iguanas falling out of the trees in Florida. Well, iguanas aren't even from Florida. So that's kind of, one of those things. So it really depends on the animal. We need to educate people on, what can make a good pet, but really what can't. But I would recommend a chinchilla. Chinchillas are fluffy, they're easy to care for, they're not aggressive, So it just depends on the animal and even actually the age of the child.
And Ken, what about you?
I think there are lots of reptiles that make great pets. A lot of small birds, hedgehogs, even armadillos to me make good pets.
And one great idea is to simply adopt a zoo animal.
That's right.
That's a great idea.
How do you do that?
That's pretty easy. You just call our office, or you can go online to our website at montgomeryzoo.com. Our office number is 334-240-4900, and tell them what animal you want to adopt, and we'll process the paperwork, and you get a nice little package. You get like an information sheet, and you get some pictures of the animal, but the money actually goes to help care for the animals that live right here in the zoo. It's not wasted money. You get a little plaque up there at the front gate that says you've adopted this animal and it's yours for a year, and you help actually care for the animal right here at the zoo.
When do you start taking, say, requests to visit groups during the year?
I take them at any time. Our summers are getting pretty booked up already. A lot of people that are getting ready to do birthday parties and church programs, especially vacation Bible schools and fairs through the summer. They've been calling to book, and about the end of October, when school starts and teachers are doing their fall planning, they'll start calling me then to book programs, through the fall. But I will book them at any time. If someone knows next April that they want a program, they can call me. I have my calendar and I'll book it anytime you want one.
How should they call?
They can just call the main zoo line. Again, it's 240-4900, and ask for the education department. Or you can actually go online, and under the education header, you can type in your information, and then I'll call you or email you back, and we'll get the confirmation ready for you for the program.
Ken, get us up to speed on exhibits. What's coming up in the way of new exhibits?
We're going to have a new alligator exhibit breaking ground soon, should be in the fall. It'll be next to our North American otter exhibit, and right now, or historically, we've kept the alligators in the South American realm, which is really the wrong place for North American alligators. So this will finally move the alligators to North America where they belong. And there could be a possibility we could incorporate American crocodiles into this exhibit as well, so we're kind of excited about that.
Do we have many American crocodiles?
They're endangered. There's only a small site in South Florida around the Turkey Point nuclear power plant that American crocodiles are found. The majority of American crocodiles are found a little more south around Cuba and the Caribbean, that area there.
Oh, we certainly saw some in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Oh, the Torcoles River was absolutely stocked well with those.
Ken, I've heard about a Stingray Bay. What is that?
It'll be another visitor interactive experience where visitors will actually get to lay hands on stingrays. They'll get to learn up close and actually touch the stingrays, and it should be a really exciting exhibit for us.
And the sky lift?
The sky lift is almost completed. We're set to open the 20th of June, and it's an opportunity to see the zoo from a bird's point of view, where you will be on top of everything and soaring over the zoo.
And of course you can cool off in the pedal boats.
That's right. That's another exhibit. We can rent a pedal boat and spend as long as you like out on our lake.
What else do you want your listeners and viewers to know about conservation and the zoo's activities?
I think it's just important that they really try to educate themselves on the issues that involve us today. Read as much as they can, come to the zoo and try and learn. There are many, many things out there that we should be aware of as a responsible citizen, and there's a lot of room for involvement.
And of course, how much land do you have here? I know you must have a wish list, and if public participation increases, perhaps new exhibits can arrive.
That's right. We have 40 acres, and we could use much more support and many, many resources.
So how would they do that, Jennifer? How can people support the zoo, aside from the adopting animals?
Well, they can always just make a donation if they want to the zoo. Education programs actually also help the zoo out, just coming and visiting the zoo. And it makes a big difference, you know, even in your children's lives. People don't realize how you can change the view of a child just by bringing them out to the zoo. And I mean, you see a lion roar on TV, that means nothing, but when you're standing there at the exhibit when that lion's roaring, it gives you an appreciation for what these animals are really like out in the wild. And just coming out to visit, you know, really helps the zoo out, because all of our money goes right back into our budget to help, you know, bring about new exhibits and, you know, things for people to do when they come out here.
And of course, the Montgomery Zoological Society is very supportive of the city of Montgomery Zoo.
Very supportive, yes. As a matter of fact, they do most of the funding for this museum alone, so they are very supportive of our organization.
Well, we are going to follow Glenda McNair very shortly to Parakeet Cove. So get us up to date on Parakeet Cove and what we can look forward to.
Well, Parakeet Cove is another one of those immersion exhibits that visitors actually get to lay hands on an animal. Yeah, you can go in Parakeet Cove and you can buy food, and you can actually feed hundreds of parakeets. If you're still, these parakeets will just come to the visitor. They'll land on their shoulders, their head, their arms, and they'll just feed right there. So it's really an interesting exhibit.
What's been the reaction to this from all the kids that come through?
I think the kids are really excited and amazed to be able to get that close to a bird. It's really, there's a lot of educational value, I think, to that.
I think we need to acknowledge the City of Montgomery Zoo and its participation in a number of global projects over the past dozen years, trying to save certain species. The toucan?
That's part of an SSP project. I was coordinator for that project, and the captive zoo population for toucans was getting post-reproductive. Most of the birds were old. There was some outdated reproductive techniques, and they weren't breeding real well in captivity. So with a group of 35 other zoos, we organized an importation of birds from Guyana. And as part of that project, we funded a bird count in the Iwakama National Park in Guyana. So they were able to do a bird census there. And we brought these birds into captivity, and since then, quite a few chicks have been produced from these younger birds.
So this just gives the listeners and the viewers an idea of the reach, the scope of your project in saving species.
This is one of those rare cases where we actually did bring animals from the wild into captivity just because that's the only option we had. But that doesn't happen very often anymore. Those are the old days. Things are much different in modern times in zoos. But for this population, that was the only hope. Otherwise, would have ended up with none in captivity over the next probably decade.
Well, I want to thank the three of you. We're getting excited about Glenda's walkthrough with Parakeet Cove, and we'll be seeing you again on the radio soon. And Jennifer, anything else you would like to add as an educator?
I think I'd just like to add that it's really good that we even do just interviews like this and talk about the zoo and talk about aspects of the zoo that a lot of people don't realize. A lot of people probably when they come through, they don't think about what zoos go through to acquire animals or what our long-term goals are. And I think it's good for the public to know that, to get kind of an understanding that we're not just an entertainment value in Montgomery. We really are trying to make a difference. And just like you said, globally, we really have long-term goals to be a great zoo, but also to make a big impact on conservation. I think the public might have more of an appreciation for our zoo if they realize that we're not just there for entertainment value.
And you're actually using science to bring these animals to the public.
We are, yeah.
And Ken, your big thing is interactive exhibits.
That's right. I think that's the future of zoos. No longer are people content to stare at an animal. We have Animal Planet. We have all these TV programs where the animals are in their face. I think in order to capture the public, we kind of have to do the same thing and give them a unique experience.
And show the animals in their habitat, as we have here in the Mann Wildlife Museum and in the zoo itself.
That's right.
And of course on the computer, I have been hooked by the Tacora eagles this year, raising their 3 eaglets. And they're just getting tremendously big. And the 5 great blue heron in Sapsucker Woods, that's just the most exciting, it's more exciting than television. They're alive and clacking away for food, another fish. And we'll soon be branching out off of the nest onto the limbs.
So Ken, we were so frightened that we would lose the bald eagle. Is it off the endangered list?
It's still on the endangered list in most areas. The bald eagle's problem, though, is due to DDT and eggs not hatching more than habitat loss. So that was much easier to correct than habitat loss. So the bald eagles are coming back.
Thank you again, and we're looking forward to our walkthrough of Parakeet Cove. Glenda, anything you want to add at this point?
No, I'm excited to see those pretty birds.
Just as she's seen them in the rainforest and the jungle. Thank you all for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Well, this is Parakeet Cove. We have about 500 parakeets in here. They're all considered budgies. There's many different kinds of parakeets. But the whole idea is, as you can see, it's a complete walkthrough area. People can come in here, they can buy little sticks with food on it, and as you walk through, the birds will land on you and eat off of the sticks. And a lot of times they'll be around your feet and land on your shoulders. So it's really a great hands-on area for people to come in and enjoy these birds up close and personal. As you can see, without any food, no birds. But when you have food, they'll land all over you.
We have been visiting with Jennifer Murphy Hutchison, the Curator of Education for the City of Montgomery Zoo, and with Ken Knorr, Manager of Conservation and Enrichment. Glenda McNair is a local birder and member of several expeditions to Central and South America to see birds in their natural habitat. Our program is a public service of Troy University.